The Lithirian Union was a collection of beautiful worlds scattered across the spiral arm of the galaxy. Their cities rose like shining towers shaped with elegance, and their skies were painted with colors unknown to human eyes. The Lithirians valued peace, harmony, and the pursuit of knowledge. For centuries they had lived in prosperity, but peace does not last forever. From the far edge of the stars came the Ver Dominion, a brutal empire that valued conquest above all else. Their fleets were vast and merciless. Wherever they went, they left ashes. Worlds fell, people were enslaved, and those who resisted were erased from history. The Lithirians were not warriors. They had fleets, but those fleets were designed for travel and exploration, not for war. Their defenses were weak, their strategies gentle, and their hearts too soft for the cruelty of the Ver. At first, the Lithirians tried to reason. They sent envoys with gifts of peace. The Ver answered with fire. Then the Lithirians tried to flee, abandoning colonies and retreating deeper into their core systems. But the Dominion followed, relentless and hungry. Every passing month, another star system fell. The Lithirians realized that they were facing extinction, so they made a choice they had never imagined. They sent out a call. The call was not a simple message. It was a desperate plea, encoded in every major language known to the Union, then translated into mathematical signals and bursts of energy, hurled into the void with every transmitter they had. It was a cry for salvation, a whisper into the darkness of the galaxy. We are dying. We are peaceful. We cannot fight. If there is anyone at all who hears this, help us. For many weeks the Lithirians waited. Their leaders debated whether the signal would even reach anyone. The galaxy was vast. Their voice could be lost forever. But in their hearts they hoped. The answer came from a world they had almost overlooked: Earth. The humans had only recently stepped beyond their solar system. Compared to the Lithirians, their technology was young, their politics fractured, and their cultures divided. When the Lithirians first detected the faint blue world on the edge of its small yellow star, they had dismissed it as primitive. Not a threat, not an ally, just another rising species. But now, that same world answered their call. The message was short, sent in firm words, translated into a dozen alien dialects but carrying the same weight in every language. We hear you. We are coming. At first, the Lithirians could not believe it. How could a world like Earth dare to challenge the Dominion? What chance did such a young race have against fleets that had ruled the stars for centuries? Their leaders debated endlessly. Some argued it was foolish to place hope in such a world. Others whispered that perhaps no one else would come, and so the Lithirians waited. Weeks passed. The Dominion pressed harder. Refugees poured into the Lithirian core worlds. Families abandoned their homes. Whole planets emptied as the people fled. Fear grew like a shadow. The Lithirians wondered if Earth's promise was just empty words. Then the skies changed. The first human fleet arrived in Lithirian space without ceremony, without warning. Massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, black silhouettes against the stars. They were not elegant like Lithirian cruisers, nor graceful like the Dominion's warships. They were heavy, angular, built with brutal efficiency. Their hulls bore scars, as if they had already survived countless battles. Their weapons bristled like the teeth of predators. The Lithirians watched in silence as the human commander broadcast a single message. "This is Earth's fleet. Where do you need us?" The Lithirians had expected diplomats, perhaps scholars with strategies, maybe aid in the form of supplies. What they received was an army. Soldiers in armor stepped onto Lithirian stations, their movements sharp and disciplined. Their eyes carried a weight, a coldness that spoke of struggles long past. These were not people who had lived in peace. These were survivors of endless conflict. The Lithirians were unsettled. Whispers spread quickly. They look like predators. Their machines are built only for killing. Are these truly our saviors? Yet when the Dominion struck again, all doubts were silenced. It began at Veyron's Reach, a frontier colony rich with resources. The Dominion attacked with overwhelming force, expecting another easy victory. Their fleets rained fire upon the colony's defense towers, and their ground forces poured onto the surface. But Earth had been waiting. Human ships moved like wolves among sheep. They did not form neat lines of battle, nor follow the elegant tactics of the Lithirians. They struck with sudden violence, tearing holes through Dominion cruisers with brutal weapons. Where Dominion armor was thick, Humans poured fire until it cracked. Where Dominion ships retreated, humans chased without mercy. On the ground, it was worse. The Dominion soldiers expected a soft resistance, but what they found were humans who fought like storms. They used traps, ambushes, and weapons that tore through fortified walls. They did not retreat, they did not falter. Every squad of humans fought as if the fate of their entire species rested on that single battle. The Dominion, for the first time in decades, fell back. When the smoke cleared, the Letherians walked among the ruins. Their colony had survived, though scarred. Dominion bodies littered the ground, their machines burned to scrap. And everywhere stood the humans, their faces grim and tired, their weapons still warm. The Letherians were in awe and in fear. These were not gentle saviors. These were not saints from the stars. These were monsters of war, born from a world where conflict was part of life, where survival was not given but fought for. But the truth was clear. The Letherians had called for salvation, and Earth had answered. The Letherians had lived in peace for so long that even after seeing humanity's first battle against the Dominion, they could not fully understand what they had witnessed. To them, war was something ancient, something that belonged to the darker ages of their past. They had never imagined that another species might carry war inside its very bones. And yet, Earth's warriors stood in their halls, heavy boots echoing on crystal floors, their armor dark and scarred, their eyes sharp with focus. They were not like Letherians who moved with grace and spoke with careful calm. These humans were direct, their voices low and steady, their movements precise. It was as if every breath they took was part of a drill, as if discipline had been carved into them since birth. The Letherian leaders gathered to meet with Earth's commanders. The chamber was filled with tall Letherian diplomats in flowing robes, their faces lined with worry. The human officers stood in stark contrast, armored even within the meeting hall, carrying tablets filled with tactical data, maps, and strike plans. "Why do you keep your armor on?" one Letherian asked, his voice quivering slightly. "This is a place of peace." The human commander, a woman with gray at her temples and scars across her face, answered simply, "Because peace ends the moment your enemy decides it does. We keep our armor on until the last thread is gone." The Letherians fell into silence. They realized that to these humans, war was not a distant possibility. It was the normal state of existence. News of Earth's arrival spread quickly across the Union. Some Letherians rejoiced, praising the humans as protectors sent by fate. Others whispered in fear, wondering if they had traded one conqueror for another. Families on refugee worlds sent messages begging for human soldiers to be stationed nearby. At the same time, artists painted grim scenes of human warriors standing like shadows against firelit skies, unsure if they represented salvation or doom. But debate soon gave way to reality. The Dominion was not waiting. Only weeks after Earth's first victory at Veyron's Reach, the Dominion returned with greater force. This time they targeted the planet Celara, a jewel of the Union known for its floating cities and seas of silver-blue water. The Letherians begged the humans to defend it, though some still doubted whether these monsters could truly save them without destroying everything in the process. The humans did not hesitate. The fleet moved swiftly, its black hulls cutting through space like blades. From orbit, their ships deployed not only firepower but also swarms of drones, scanners, and satellites. Within hours of arrival, they had mapped the Dominion's likely points of attack. While Letherians marveled at the humans' speed, the soldiers themselves treated it as routine. For them, preparation was survival. When the Dominion fleets emerged from hyperspace, they were met with something they had never seen before. Humans did not form lines of battle. They did not wait politely for the enemy to approach. They struck first, fast and hard. Entire squadrons of Dominion ships were ripped apart before they could even spread into formation. On the ground, the story was even more brutal. The Dominion forces landed on Celara's surface, expecting resistance to crumble as it always had. But the humans were already waiting. Entire platoons lay hidden in the shallow waters, their armored forms blending into the landscape. When the Dominion advanced, the water itself erupted with fire and steel. Letherian citizens watched from their floating platforms as the battle raged below. They saw human squads move like hunting packs, covering each other, pushing forward with ruthless coordination. They saw Dominion soldiers, feared conquerors of the galaxy, fall back in confusion, unprepared for an enemy that fought with such cunning. The Lithirians were horrified by the efficiency. Where Lithirians might have fought to disable or disarm, humans struck to end the threat completely. Where Lithirians might have retreated to preserve life, humans pressed forward even at great cost, determined not to yield a single step. The sky itself burned as human ships and Dominion cruisers clashed above the oceans. Fire rained down, waves rose like mountains, and whole platforms shook under the shock waves of war. Yet against all odds, the humans did not break. They fought until the Dominion's mighty fleet began to scatter. Telara survived, but it would never look the same. After the battle, the Lithirians walked through the ruins of what had once been gardens and marketplaces. Human soldiers stood guard among the rubble, their armor dented, their weapons still ready. Some carried the wounded, both human and Lithirian, without complaint, setting them gently on medical stretchers. Others scanned the skies, refusing to relax even after victory. One Lithirian elder approached a group of soldiers. His voice trembled as he spoke. "You saved us, but at such a cost. Must salvation always come with fire?" The human soldier looked at him with tired eyes. "It is better to see fire and live than to see silence and be gone." The elder did not reply. He realized then that humans did not measure the world the same way Lithirians did. For them, survival was the highest duty. Beauty, peace, even safety. All of these were treasures to be defended, not guarantees to be expected. As weeks passed, the Dominion suffered defeats they had never imagined possible. On every front where humans appeared, their fleets stumbled. The Dominion tried to adapt, but they found humanity impossible to predict. One day, humans struck with overwhelming force, tearing through an entire fleet in hours. The next, they vanished into the void, ambushing supply lines and crippling logistics. The Lithirians watched closely. At first, they trembled at the savagery, but then they noticed something else. Despite their fearsome reputation, the humans never abandoned the innocent. They guarded refugee ships as fiercely as they fought warships. They built shelters for displaced families. They shared food and medicine without hesitation. To the Lithirians, it was a contradiction. Humans were monsters in battle, but guardians in peace. They fought with claws and fire, but when the fight was done, they offered their hands. Still, not all Lithirians were convinced. In private chambers, leaders debated endlessly. What if they do not leave when the war ends? One asked. What if they turn their weapons on us? Another whispered. They are dangerous. We cannot control them. But then others argued, without them, the Dominion would have destroyed us already. They may be monsters, but they are our monsters now. Better to fear our allies than to be slaves to our enemies. In the end, the arguments changed nothing. The truth was simple. Earth's warriors had arrived, and the war was no longer one-sided. On the Dominion side, fear began to spread. Captains spoke in hushed tones of battles lost, of enemies who fought like beasts that never tired, never surrendered. Rumors grew among their soldiers. They are not men. They are demons. They come from a cursed world. Pray we never face them on the ground. The Dominion's confidence, once unshakable, began to crack. And in that crack, hope returned to the Lithirians. In the quiet after Celara's battle, the human commander stood on a balcony, overlooking the silver-blue seas, still scarred by war. Beside her stood a Lithirian diplomat, his eyes wide with both admiration and unease. "You do not fight like us," the diplomat said softly. "You do not fight like anyone we have ever seen." The commander's voice was calm, but her words were sharp as iron. "That is because we cannot afford to fight like you. Where we come from, weakness means death. Mercy means defeat. We do not fight for glory. We fight so our children can see another sunrise." The Lithirian diplomat lowered his gaze. For the first time, he understood. Humanity's brutality was not born of cruelty. It was born of necessity. And so the galaxy began to whisper a new truth. The Lithirians had called for salvation, but Earth had unleashed its monsters. The war against the Dominion did not slow. Each week brought new battles, new losses, and new victories. Everywhere the humans fought, the tides shifted. Their fleets tore through Dominion lines, their soldiers struck like storms, and their machines left nothing standing in their path. For the Lithirians, this was salvation. Their worlds, once helpless, now stood defended. Refugee ships reached safety under human escort. Colonies that once trembled at the thought of invasion now sent messages of hope. For the first time in years, the Litherians began to believe they might survive. And yet fear did not vanish. The Litherian Union was a people of harmony. They had grown in a culture where conflict was resolved with words, where strength was measured by art, invention, and wisdom. Their children were raised with stories of peace. Their schools taught diplomacy. And their armies, what little they had, were meant only for defense. Now, every Litherian saw the humans. They saw their weapons, their armor, their endless drills. They saw soldiers who laughed at danger, who sharpened their knives even while resting, who studied the art of war as if it were music. At first, many Litherians avoided the humans. On stations where both species lived, the sight of human soldiers brought silence. Markets fell quiet when armored boots passed through. Families pulled their children close, whispering warnings. Some even said, "These humans frighten me more than the Dominion." But over time, something began to change. On the world of Talira, a Litherian farming colony, the Dominion attacked with sudden force. The Litherians had no defenses, only fields of golden crops and soft skies. When Dominion ships entered orbit, the people prepared for capture. But before the first wave landed, human dropships screamed through the atmosphere. Soldiers poured out, forming lines between the villagers and the attackers. The battle was fierce, smoke filling the fields, fire consuming barns and crops. When it was over, the humans stood bloodied but unbroken. The Dominion was gone. Not a single villager had been harmed. The Litherians of Talira gathered around the soldiers. They expected to see cruelty in their eyes, but instead they saw only exhaustion, determination, and relief. One human collapsed from wounds, and a Litherian healer rushed forward. To everyone's surprise, the soldier smiled weakly and said, "Save the villagers first." From that day, the Tellarans began to see the humans differently. They were monsters in battle, yes, but monsters who placed themselves between danger and the innocent. This pattern repeated across the Union. Everywhere humans fought. They left not only ruins of war, but also stories. On a medical ship, Litherian doctors were shocked to see human soldiers refuse treatment until civilians were cared for. In one case, a wounded human gave away his own oxygen mask to save a Litherian child during an evacuation. On another planet, soldiers built shelters with their own hands for refugees, working through the night without rest. The Litherians whispered to each other, "They fight like beasts, but they protect like guardians. They frighten me, but I trust them with my life." Maybe we were wrong. Maybe monsters are what we needed. Still, fear lingered. In the halls of the Union Council, leaders argued. "These humans are too dangerous," one said. "What if they do not leave when the war ends? They may save us today, but tomorrow they could turn their weapons on us," another warned. "Do not forget, they fight because they love war." But a Litherian elder shook her head. "No, look closely. They do not fight because they love war. They fight because they cannot afford not to. War made them what they are, and now that same war is what saves us." The debate never ended, but slowly the truth became harder to deny. Without humans, the Litherians would have been broken. With them, they had a chance. The Dominion, too, began to whisper in fear. Captured Dominion soldiers spoke of humans with trembling voices. They do not stop. They fight even when wounded. They fight even when outnumbered. They do not know fear. Admirals of the Dominion began to avoid battles where humans were present. Entire fleets retreated at the sight of Earth's black warships. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion doubted its own strength, and in that doubt, the Litherians found hope. Yet something else grew alongside hope: connection. On a remote station orbiting the star Elvira, Litherian engineers worked beside human technicians. At first they struggled. The Litherians valued beauty and design, while the humans cared only for efficiency. The Litherians wanted balance and safety, while humans wanted speed and power. Arguments broke out daily. But as days turned to weeks, they began to understand each other. The Litherians learned why humans pushed so hard. Every second mattered in war. And the humans learned why the Litherians valued beauty. Even in battle, people needed reminders of peace. Together, they built ships faster than either could alone. They forged weapons that blended human ferocity with Litherian precision. What began as distrust slowly grew into respect. On another front, Lithirian civilians grew close to human soldiers stationed on their worlds. Children, once afraid, now followed the armored figures with wide eyes, asking endless questions. Some soldiers, though hardened by years of war, took time to teach them simple games or share stories of Earth. One Lithirian child asked a soldier, "Why do you fight so much? Don't you want peace?" The soldier knelt, his helmet under his arm, revealing tired but kind eyes. "Of course we want peace. That's why we fight. If we do not, someone else will take it away. Peace is not free, it must be protected." The child thought about this for a long time. The word spread through the village, then across the colony until they became a saying. Peace is not free. It is guarded by those who fight. Over time, the Lithirians realized something profound. The humans' so-called monstrosity was not cruelty, but resilience. Their savagery in battle came from a history of hardship, a world that had forced them to adapt or die. And their mercy, hidden beneath their iron discipline, came from knowing too well what suffering felt like. The Lithirians began to ask themselves, perhaps the galaxy had dismissed Earth too quickly. Perhaps in a universe ruled by empires like the Dominion, only a people like humanity, scarred, unyielding, unafraid, could stand against them. Still, the bond was fragile. In private, many Lithirians confessed they were still afraid. Afraid of what humans might do once the Dominion was gone. Afraid of what humans might become if left unchecked. But even as they feared, they trusted. For when the Dominion came, when the skies burned and the ground shook, it was always the humans who stood in front. Always the humans who fought hardest. Always the humans who shielded those who could not shield themselves. And slowly the whispers changed. They are monsters, but they are our monsters. One night on a quiet colony where both humans and Lithirians rested after a brutal campaign, a Lithirian musician played a soft melody. To everyone's surprise, human soldiers gathered around, listening in silence. The music carried through the camp, gentle and fragile, a reminder of everything worth protecting. When the song ended, one human whispered, "That is why we fight." The Lithirians understood then. The bond was no longer just necessity. It was becoming something more, a partnership born of fear, forged in fire and strengthened by hope. The Dominion had underestimated humanity. At first, they had thought humans were a minor annoyance, a curious species from a distant blue planet. But after months of battle, they had learned the truth. Humans were relentless, unpredictable, and utterly fearless. Every engagement had turned their carefully planned attacks into disasters. Entire fleets had been shattered. Strongholds that once seemed secure had fallen. Rumors spread across Dominion space of black ships that appeared from nowhere, and soldiers who fought with the precision of predators. For the Lithirians, these victories brought hope. But with every battle, the stakes grew higher. The Dominion had now called upon their greatest commanders and their largest armadas. They would not fail again. The target was the Lithirian core, a cluster of planets where most of the population, technology, and history of the Union was concentrated. If the Dominion succeeded, the Union would be destroyed entirely. Human and Lithirian leaders met in a massive council chamber on the station Naria, overlooking the core's capital. The room was tense, buzzing with urgency. Maps floated in holograms above the table, showing Dominion fleets converging from multiple points. The Lithirians spoke first. "This is unlike anything we have faced. Their numbers, they are endless. We may not survive." The human commander, standing tall with her armored hands crossed over her chest, shook her head. "Survival is not an option. It is a necessity. We fight, we adapt, and we win. That is what we do." Another Lithirian diplomat frowned. "But they have weapons that can destroy entire cities in minutes." The commander smiled grimly. "Then we make sure they do not have time." Preparation for the battle was intense. Human soldiers drilled endlessly, moving in perfect coordination with Lithirian engineers and scientists. Lithirians had never seen war preparations like this. Humans built not only weapons but strategies within strategies. Where Lithirians designed shields and protective measures, humans designed traps, decoys, and counterattacks. The collaboration was imperfect at first. Lithirian ideas seemed slow to humans, and human methods seemed brutal to Lithirians. Arguments broke out, but eventually understanding grew. Lithirians realized that humans were not reckless. They were fast, efficient, and precise. And humans learned that Lithirians had insight humans could not see. Subtle patterns, weak points, and creative solutions. Together, they became a force neither could have imagined alone. When the Dominion fleet finally arrived, the sky above the core blazed with fire. Dozens of massive cruisers emerged from hyperspace, their engines burning bright as they moved into attack positions. Dominion ground forces descended in dozens of landing pods, expecting quick victories and easy conquest. But the humans and Lithirians were ready. The first wave of attack met a wall of fire. Human cruisers struck with coordinated precision, disabling the Dominion's shields while Lithirian energy pulses disrupted navigation systems. On the ground, humans and Lithirians worked together to create defensive lines. Humans carried heavy weapons and moved quickly, covering Lithirians who used their technology to control the battlefield. Traps hidden in cities and forests slowed Dominion troops, and ambushes appeared where no one had expected them. The Dominion expected fear. Instead, they found defiance. The battle raged for days. Dominion forces were vast, but humans were relentless. Every time a fleet moved to strike, humans predicted their path and countered with devastating attacks. Entire enemy battalions were trapped and destroyed before they could reach the core. Dominion commanders began to panic. Nothing they tried worked. Lithirian citizens watched the humans fight with awe and terror. They had never seen courage like this. Soldiers who could have stayed safe in orbit instead risked everything on the surface, moving through fire and smoke to protect civilians. They climbed ruined buildings, rescued trapped Lithirians, and held positions even when surrounded. One Lithirian child hid in a bunker with her family, watching through a small viewport. She whispered, "They are monsters, but they are saving us." Her mother nodded quietly. The words spread across the core like a prayer. Humans were terrifying, unstoppable, and merciful at the same time. At the center of the conflict, the human commander led a small strike team deep into Dominion territory. Their goal was the largest Dominion command station in orbit above the core's capital. It was a fortress of steel, armed with the most dangerous weapons in the Dominion fleet. Any failure here would have meant the destruction of everything the humans had fought to protect. The team moved like shadows, slipping past patrols and automated defenses. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. They planted charges in strategic points, ready to collapse the station from within. Dominion soldiers attacked, but humans met them with a combination of brute force and precision. In minutes, the command station began to fall apart. Above the core, the Dominion fleet scrambled in confusion. Without the station, their attacks lost coordination. Human ships exploited every weakness, striking faster than the enemy could react. The tide of the battle turned decisively in favor of the humans and their Lithirian allies. When the Dominion realized defeat was inevitable, some tried to retreat. Others surrendered. Humans did not hesitate. They pressed forward, ensuring that no Dominion ship or soldier could regroup. Lithirian engineers and scientists worked alongside them, repairing defenses and securing strategic positions. The collaboration was complete. By the end of the battle, the Dominion had lost nearly half its fleet. Its ground forces were shattered, and its reputation as an unstoppable empire had been broken. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Humans from Earth were not just warriors, they were monsters, terrifying in battle and unyielding in resolve. For the Lithirians, victory brought relief, awe, and fear. They had survived because of the humans, yet they could not deny the truth. Earth's warriors were unlike anything they had ever known. Their methods were brutal, their discipline absolute, and their courage limitless. And yet, despite their monstrous nature in battle, humans never harmed civilians, never stole from the weak, and never abandoned those in need. The Lithirians began to understand what they had called upon. They had not summoned saints. They had summoned a species shaped by struggle, hardened by hardship, and forged in conflict. These were humans, the monsters of their own stories, terrifying to behold but protectors of life. In the aftermath, the human commander addressed both her soldiers and Lithirian leaders. Her voice carried across the repaired city plazas, steady and unwavering. "Do not forget this," she said. "We fight because we must. We protect because we care. We are not heroes. We are survivors. And if anyone threatens this galaxy again, we will be ready." Lithirians listened in silence. They understood now that humanity's strength was not in weapons or technology, but in their will to endure, their refusal to surrender, and their determination to defend life, even when everything seemed lost. The bond between humans and Lithirians had grown stronger. Respect had replaced fear, trust had replaced doubt. Together they had faced the Dominion's greatest assault and emerged victorious. But both species knew the truth. The galaxy would not remain peaceful forever. The humans had proven what they were capable of, and the Lithirians had learned to accept it. They had called for salvation, and Earth had answered. But in doing so, it had revealed monsters whose strength could not be measured by beauty or diplomacy alone. The galaxy would never forget the turning of the war. The humans had shown the Lithirians and the Dominion that survival was a force unlike any other, and that the monsters of Earth were capable of reshaping the fate of worlds. The battle for the Lithirian core had ended. The Dominion's fleets were shattered, their ground forces broken, and their plans of conquest crushed. Across the Union, people rejoiced in the streets, celebrating survival and newfound freedom. The humans, however, did not celebrate in the same way. Their victory was complete, but the cost had been heavy. Everywhere they went, their presence left scars. Cities had been damaged to protect civilians. Forests were scorched, and the once pristine lands of the Lithirians bore evidence of human combat. Even as they saved lives, humans had become a force that changed the worlds they touched. Lithirians walked among them, awe mixed with unease. They had called for salvation, and it had arrived in the form of monsters. But these monsters fought for life, for survival, for freedom, and because of them, entire worlds remained standing. On the surface of Celara, one of the hardest-hit colonies, Lithirian leaders met with the human commander once more. The city around them had been rebuilt, but the smoke from the last battle still lingered in the skies. "You have saved us," a Lithirian elder said, his voice steady, but his eyes reflecting lingering fear. "But we cannot forget what you are. Your methods, your strength. It terrifies us." The human commander nodded. "We do what must be done. Fear is a part of survival. The Dominion feared us, and that fear saved lives. But remember this, we do not fight for glory. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Another Lithirian diplomat stepped forward. "Will you remain with us? Or will you leave now that the Dominion has been defeated?" The commander looked to her soldiers, all of whom were exhausted, battered, but unbroken. "We will leave, but we will always answer the call if the galaxy faces another threat. Do not expect us to be gentle. We are not angels. We are Earth." The Lithirians realized then that humanity's gift was not in the battles they fought, but in their presence. Humans were a species forged by hardship, shaped by struggle, and strengthened by adversity. They carried a fierceness that the galaxy had never known. And yet, despite their monstrous reputation in war, humans showed care. They built shelters, shared food and medicine, and worked to repair what had been damaged. They taught the Lithirians how to survive, how to fight, and how to protect life in a universe that could be cruel and unforgiving. The Union slowly began to change. Lithirians no longer saw weakness as safety. They no longer believed that beauty alone could protect them. They had learned that survival required courage, determination, and sometimes the kind of ferocity that humans carried naturally. Children on every planet whispered stories of the humans they had seen, soldiers who had rescued them from burning buildings, pilots who had swept into the skies like predators to save their families, engineers who had repaired critical infrastructure while under fire. To the Lithirian youth, humans became legends, not saints, not heroes, but monsters who fought for the right to live. One child, watching a human soldier quietly repair a damaged drone, asked, "Why do you risk everything for us?" The soldier paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because no one deserves to live in fear if we can stop it." "That is what we do," the word spread, reaching every corner of the Union. Humans had not only defeated the Dominion, they had reshaped the Lithirian understanding of courage and responsibility. Despite the victories, there was no sense of triumph among the humans. Each battle had taken its toll. Soldiers carried wounds that were not only physical but mental. Ships had been lost, equipment destroyed, and lives ended. But still, they pressed forward until every Dominion force had either surrendered or retreated beyond reach. When the last Dominion commander fell, the humans stood silently. There was no cheering, no celebration. Victory to them was a quiet acknowledgement of duty fulfilled. To the Litherians, this was both frightening and inspiring. These were creatures who could unleash devastation, yet maintain discipline and control over their own fury. As the humans prepared to leave, Litherian leaders gathered to speak one last time. They wanted to offer thanks, to understand what they had experienced, and to express both admiration and fear. "You have changed our worlds," a Litherian elder said. "You came as saviors, but you are unlike anything we expected. Will your kind always be so fierce?" The commander studied the elder with calm eyes. "We do not seek to be feared, but we do not shy from it. If strength is required, we provide it. If mercy is required, we provide that too. But never forget we are humans. And humans survive." The Litherians nodded. They understood finally that Earth's warriors were not defined by gentleness or diplomacy. They were defined by their will, their endurance, and their refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. On the journey home, the humans did not speak much. Their ships moved silently through space, leaving Litherian worlds behind. For the Litherians, the emptiness felt strange. They had grown used to human presence, their discipline, their harsh efficiency, their strange rituals of camaraderie. Now those monsters were leaving, yet even in departure they left a lasting mark. Litherian scholars recorded their strategies, engineers studied their technology, and children told stories of the black-armored warriors who had descended like storms and protected them from destruction. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Earth's monsters had fought for life, and their legend would endure. The Litherians began to rebuild fully. Cities rose from the ashes, forests were replanted, and the scars of war slowly faded. But the memory of humans remained, like a shadow across their culture. They remembered the raw courage, the harsh efficiency, the unwavering will. And slowly the galaxy began to whisper the truth. When the Litherians called for salvation, they were not rescued by angels or gods. They were saved by monsters. Monsters who fought for life, who endured suffering, who protected the helpless. Monsters who were human. In the quiet moments after the war, a Litherian child stood by a river, watching the reflection of the stars. She whispered to herself, "They came and saved us, not because they had to, but because they chose to. They fought even when it was hard. They fought even when no one else could." Her words carried through the colony, reaching others. And slowly, they became a lesson repeated across the Union. True courage is not always gentle. True protection is not always soft. Sometimes salvation comes in forms that terrify but also inspire. And Earth had sent exactly that. The humans would never return as conquerors or rulers. They had fought, protected, and left. But their impact remained. The Litherians learned a new truth about strength, survival, and the cost of freedom. They learned that the galaxy was not kind, and sometimes only those willing to fight like monsters could preserve life. The story of humanity spread from star system to star system, whispered by survivors and recorded by historians. We called for salvation, and it came. We asked for help, and it arrived. But it was not gentle. It was not elegant. It was Earth, and it was terrifying. And in that truth, the Litherians found hope. The monsters had saved them. The galaxy would never forget.